Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The government has published its official policy document setting out its plans for Brexit. The white paper lays out 12 guiding principles, including migration control and withdrawal from the single market. Labour said the document had been produced too late for any meaningful scrutiny. Our chief political correspondent, Vicky Young, reports.
Be ambitious, be positive about Britain's future outside the European Union. That's the message from ministers who say they're aiming for a strong new partnership with the EU.
Secretary David Davis.
The man charged with achieving that told the Commons that the referendum was not a vote to turn our back on Europe.
It was a vote of confidence in the UK's ability to succeed in the world and an expression of optimism that our best days are still to come. Whatever the outcome of our negotiations, we seek a more open, outward-looking, confident and fairer UK that works for everyone.
Under pressure to reveal more, the government's published some Brexit plans. Priorities include putting Parliament in control of our laws, making immigration decisions in the UK with a new system that'll be phased in over time, continuing security cooperation with the EU and establishing the freest possible trading relationship with EU countries. Theresa May's already announced that the UK will leave the single market, but today's document says she'll seek a special arrangement for key industries such as car manufacturers and financial services. MPs are demanding that Parliament is regularly consulted when negotiations get underway.
So there's no point in having a vote after he's already signed it off with the European Union, treating Parliament as some sort of afterthought.
MPs are demanding a say on the deal that Theresa May does with the European Union. They want the power to order her back to Brussels if they think it's not good enough. But before Labour can focus on that fight, they're going to have to get over a few problems of their own.
Is Brexit splitting Labour, Mr Corbyn?
The Labour leader ordered his MPs not to block the Brexit process last night, but dozens disobeyed, some resigning from his shadow cabinet. Jeremy Corbyn couldn't even rely on one of his closest allies, Diane Abbott. She was taken ill shortly after this debate, and just before the crucial vote, and had to go home. But some colleagues don't believe her.
It is extraordinary that Diane Abbott sneaks off saying that she's ill. You know, people who are well enough at 5 o'clock to be in Parliament are well enough to be there for the vote at 7 o'clock. I think we know what's going on here. She bottled the vote.
Tonight, Malta is preparing to host a summit of all 28 EU leaders. Theresa May's set out her intentions. She'll leave early so everyone else can discuss their Brexit tactics. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
Now, the government has published its Brexit negotiating plans in a white paper setting out 12 principles from controlling migration to what they call taking control of our own laws. Brexit Secretary David Davis promised plenty of engagement with Parliament and the public, but Labour said the document said nothing. Our political correspondent Michael Crick is in Westminster. So, Michael, is Labour right?
Well, certainly I don't think this document, a very grey production, tells us anything new about the government's negotiating position, the 12 principles ahead of the Brexit talks. Indeed, the SNP today described it as simply a laminated version of Theresa May's Lancaster House speech from a fortnight ago, which I suppose is not surprising. This document was rushed out in response to MPs' demands that there should be a white paper. It was clearly cobbled together in a hurry, indeed so much so that at one point there's a serious error. It says that British workers are legally entitled to 14 weeks holiday a year.
Well, from empty papers to empty houses, Michael. And what's the latest on your allegations about Paul Nuttall, the UKIP leader, and the fact that he didn't put the property he claimed on his nomination form on his address?
Well, you may recall that last night we revealed that Paul Nuttall had put on his nomination form an address in Stoke-on-Trent as his home, and we discovered that the house was actually empty. And when we caught up with Mr. Nuttall yesterday, he told me he'd never actually been there. What are you going to do if somebody makes a complaint?
About what?
About your false declaration.
It's not a false declaration, sir.
It is, because it's not your home.
No, it's not. It will.
Have you ever been to 65 Oxford Street?
It's not a false declaration at all, OK?
Have you ever been to 65 Oxford Street?
No, I haven't. People are moving in for me.
Well, the returning officer in Stoke-on-Trent revealed today that she was in consultation with the Electoral Commission, having received a complaint from a member of the public. There's now a police inquiry as well, but the by-election will have to go ahead on the 23rd of February. But if Mr Nuttall were to win, then the result could well be challenged. Mr Nuttall himself has revealed that he actually moved into the property last night, spent the night there. He told me today he'd been very comfy. That is all legally utterly irrelevant. What matters is where Mr Nuttall was living, what was his home at the time he was nominated for the by-election a few days ago.
Michael in Westminster, thank you very much.
The government's Brexit white paper came out today, adding more detail to Theresa May's speech last month. Actually, the white paper had a few mistakes and typos, and if you look at the metadata on the electronic version, as the BBC's George Greenwood did, it appears to have been finished at about 4:15 yesterday morning. Just right-click on the PDF in Adobe and look for document properties. A late draft is normal, but it does suggest that a lot of thinking is still underway. The document itself raises multiple issues from civil nuclear regulation to data protection, just really to say that they'll be resolved as smoothly as possible. There are other specifics, such as the Erasmus Higher Education Exchange Programme or the Pet Passport Scheme, that get no mention at all. Yes, the future travel status of millions of dogs, cats and ferrets remains unresolved. Now, this white paper is, of course, just the British view. We may get our way, or we may be about to be hit by a European freight train. Now, political editor Nick Watt is with me. And Nick, a lot is going on. Theresa May going to Malta tomorrow for an EU Council as well as this white paper.
Yes, tomorrow Theresa May will attend what may well be one of the last European Council meetings before she triggers those Article 50 Brexit negotiations. She hopes to do that early next month. As you say, that meeting will take place in the Maltese capital of Valletta, and the main focus will be on the Mediterranean migration crisis. Now, Theresa May is going to use that issue and that summit to tell the remainder of the EU that the UK wants to be a reliable partner when we have left, when Brexit has taken place. And to illustrate that point, she will say, look, the UK would like to continue to contribute to that EU task force in the Mediterranean. She'll cite naval assets and she'll cite border cutters that are currently taking place. Now, the reason and the significance of this intervention is that as those Brexit negotiations approach, there is a growing feeling in the Cabinet that the UK is facing a daunting task of historic proportions. And so the key thing that the UK has got to do is it's got to show that it will not be a supplicant in those talks. And how do you do that? Well, you start to play some of your key cards. So we'll help you in the migration crisis. And interestingly, very interesting chapter in the white paper there, chapter 11, talking about how the UK plays a pivotal role in helping other EU countries tackle terrorism. And I spoke to one member of the Cabinet who said, look, we're not saying that we're going to withdraw cooperation on terrorism if the talks don't go our way, but it's probably a good idea to provide a reminder of the UK's significant role on that front. So look, on the day of the publication of that white paper, we thought we would take a look at some of the main challenges that will be facing the UK in those Brexit negotiations. Well, it's 75 pages long, and it provides the most detailed explanation of the government's approach to the Brexit negotiations. But there's not a single word about the first item the EU will place on the table, the multi-billion-pound divorce settlement the UK will be expected to pay. Instead, there is one short paragraph about the post-Brexit payments, and they are a long way down the line. Item number 2 on the EU list will be a demand for the UK to guarantee the rights of the 2.8 million EU nationals living in the UK. Theresa May is holding back on this one because she wants to secure reciprocal rights for the 1 million Brits living in the rest of the EU. This issue could be resolved next week, if an alliance of Tory backbenchers working quietly with senior cabinet ministers manages to force the Prime Minister's hand. Theresa May wants to reach agreement on the UK's future partnership with the EU during the two-year Brexit talks. But the EU is only obliged to take account of the final settlement at this stage, prompting the UK to accept the need for an implementation period. The White Paper is silent on the EU's view on this period. Their rules must apply. Theresa May's decision to leave the single market means the UK will no longer be able to rely on so-called passporting rights to sell financial services across the EU. So the White Paper doesn't really talk about rules in this area. Instead, it has a very simple message for the rest of the EU. 75% of your capital market business is conducted through the UK. Do you really want to put barriers in the way of that? Britain wants to free itself from much of the EU customs union to allow it to negotiate new free trade deals across the globe. But it does want to hold on to one benefit: tariff-free trade with the rest of the EU. Once again, the White Paper doesn't really talk about rules. Instead, it makes a simple plea to the EU. Surely you want to have a close relationship with one of the world's great trading nations.
Nick there, well, joining me now to talk about the forthcoming negotiation, Italian Deputy Foreign Minister Mario Giro. Thanks very much for talking to us. When you sit down as the 27 without us, what do you talk about? What is the mood in the room? What do you think? Do they say it's going to be easy, going to be difficult, we're going to be a pushover?
I think that is a daunting task for both. Because, of course, it's a divorce. A divorce is always painful, and it's a failure. We are all responsible, and we have to act quickly and with fairness. I mean quickly also because I know that it's very complicated, and we don't know exactly how to handle it. It's the first time. Okay, there is an example of Greenland, but Greenland, years and years ago, it was a little thing. UK is a big thing. And then, I say that we need to be quick because the financial markets let us no time.
It's in everybody's interest that it's quick and smooth. I mean, you've had a quick glance at the White Paper. You've heard Theresa May's speech. You know what the British position is. What do you think is not going to be deliverable, or is it all going to be deliverable?
Everything is negotiable and then also deliverable. Everything. On one side, the White Paper is a wish list with no precision on how to handle it and what, its main things are what we want, what the UK wants in this negotiation. But on the other side, the tonality of the White Paper is a good one. In general, there is no supplicants in this story. Of course, it's a failure. We have to divide, but we have to be fair.
Right.
And the White Paper says more or less what are the best results for both.
I want to push you on to specifics. What do you think will be the hardest of the issues that you have seen laid out? Is it the customs union? Is it to do with the rights of residents in different countries that are living in different countries? What's the hard issue?
Probably the commercial things. Commercial things because, and the trade in general, because of course the common market is very important for us, and it's a building block of the EU, and we need to speak a lot about that. It's very complicated, and also the idea to have on one side bilateral trade agreements. It's a long job. It's a long story, you know, you to do that. on one side. On the other side, UK cannot. We cannot accept that UK will become a tax haven near to Europe.
And that's the backup option. I mean, the Brits have said we don't want to do that, but that's what we would do if it's a bad deal. But look, the British position is that when we all sit down together, you guys are bluffing. You'll say this is difficult or that's difficult, but most of what we want is trade. Everybody wants trade. We all benefit from trade. And so you're bluffing and you will give us what we want. Or as Boris Johnson would put it, it's all about Prosecco and you'll want to sell us Prosecco and you will give in the end. Now, is that British assessment of it right or not?
No, I don't think so, because, you know, there is a time question. Because everybody wants a free market, and of course, and all the trade facilities, and it's of course in our ideas of everybody. Okay, on one side. On the other side, we worked a lot for decades to have this common market and to have another system in the globalization. Also, if the globalization is weak now, but it will not end. To have plenty of bilateral agreements. You were speaking before on the United States about multilateral and bilateral. This is not multilateral. Right. This is something that has become one common market. It's more than multilateral. And then you cannot oppose to that dozens of bilateral agreements, because first of all, to achieve this goal, you need time. Then we have to find something new. We have to be creative on this.
Just a very quick last one. I mean, one thing the British do have to offer the rest of the EU, as we currently do, is we share security cooperation, advice on terrorism, and also, incidentally, we have a navy that is helping out in the Mediterranean and in terms of the migrant crisis. Are those things that you hope are not going to be part of the bargain or part of the negotiation, or do you think Britain will be rewarded, if you like, for offering those and keeping cooperation going on those?
Look, I cannot imagine a Europe. I don't say a EU. I say Europe without UK, of course, and the main subject is defence. There is no any kind of European defence without the United Kingdom. And that means also, after defence, anti-terrorism, and security intelligence. On this field, and also on the other field of research, we need to be very cooperative among us.
Okay. Mario Gira, thanks very much. Nice talking to you. Thanks.
I've been getting away